HighSec Buyback offers a 90% JITA anywhere in HighSec. Simply go to highsec.evebuyback.com, appraise your items, create a contract, and get paid quickly.
Thank you for that. So Arsia newly elected CSM 17, as well as you were just on CSM 16, Faction Warfare Representative.
I was the glorious ascended loser of CSM 16 and a half, and I managed not to lose for CSM 17.
Yeah, you were number 1 on my ballot, so I'm really glad you got it, because I feel personal accomplishment even though I was like 3 votes. So I just want you to know that.
I mean, I appreciate your 3 votes. I did well in CSM 16 election, and I obviously did very well in the CSM 17 election. And for the most part, I small ganged it over the finish line. So a lot of little 3 vote groups help a lot.
No, that's awesome. You definitely deserve it. I'm excited for you though, because we're talking faction warfare, which like I consider you an expert in. I also consider you just like a lore role player expert, but then also someone who does really obscure small gang things. So I never see you as like the optimizer where you're like theory crafting the best fit ever, but you're like, you know what? Why can't I use autocannons on this gun? And then you go out, right?
I spend a lot of time in Pyfa, so maybe that view isn't 100% accurate. So
you are just an elite small ganger theory crafter, you just don't show it?
I mean, it's hard to answer this question because I don't always go to like min-maxing, but I obviously plan to win the fight, right?
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of the thing about small ganging, though, is engageability is definitely a thing. So not bringing the very best ship has a lot of pros in that. If I'm fighting over a structure timer, I'm bringing my best.
Yeah, because then the goal is the objective, not the fight or whatever.
But yeah, engageability is definitely a thing on not like big objective fights, right?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah,
I consider you the local small gang, like subject matter expert of CSM 17, if that's the way you can say it. So I'm stoked for you. I feel like a lot of people look at you and say, oh no, lore, and it's like, no, Arsia represents so much more. And so I think that's what we're going to talk about today. Some lore, but also other things too.
I mean, there's people who don't like me, and there's a lot of people who do like me. Obviously, I got elected, so
yeah, haters gonna hate. We also, I completely forgot, Gerg is here. Gerg, I know you're on camera, but not with your face. Can you say something?
Good morning. Well, actually, it just stopped being morning, so good afternoon.
All right, and welcome. Thank you for joining us. I know you
it's
wanted
morning enough. I just woke up.
Yeah.
Honestly, so did I.
Clearly, we are not morning people despite being on a morning talk show. Morning or talk show. But yeah, Gerg, I know at some point you wanted to discuss some things in the news unrelated to the lore background faction warfare. But we can get to those later in the show. Right now, I know number 1 on our agenda is these mails that came out. And I being a faction warfare like newbie and not really involved in a lot of this, have never seen mail from NPCs that wasn't like, I'd say cookie cutter mail, like, oh, somebody in your corp biomass or whatever. So Arsia, do you wanna kick us off with those mails? I'm assuming they're legit and that it's a
they're legit. They're from NPCs. They went out to the Galente and the Caldari militias. The NPCs appear to be newly created. Obviously, if you look at their background, it's not an NPC background. They show a lot of stuff that would make you like do a double take. Because like some NPCs are like hired 100 years ago because the character is that old, because people live a lot longer in New Eden with medical advancements and like implants to extend life. But I think these 2 officers from the Galente and the Caldari are not that old, but they're legit NPCs. And it's in regard to the system of Othanon in Placid. So Othanon is a dead end in the Caldari Galente faction warfare. Kind of like on the ass end of it. It's in Placid. It is, I believe, the only Triglavian minor victory in Blasted. This fact is important. So during the invasions, this system, which is not a blue or specific type yellow star, was invaded, and the Triglavians won that system, making it a minor victory. The Triglavians use these systems, they call it the Forest of Glorification. They use it as resource gathering and like a base in K-space kind of. Sid, it's part of the war zone, flips back and forth between who has major control of the system between the Gallente and the Caldari, like who has space superiority in the system. Placid is historically a Gallente region. When back in early April, we first got a news bit saying that Federal Marines encountered Triglavians on the surface of Athenon 6, I believe. Yeah, the first line was Triglavian forces encountered on the surface of Athenon 6 by Federal Marines. Edencom describes incident as disturbing. And this was just a little blurb in a news article that released in early April.
Is this like a scope article?
Yes.
Okay.
You want me to link all these in the podcast?
If you want, yeah.
Yeah.
And then maybe Nick can show it for the audience.
All right, I put the first two in. The second one came out and said the Fed Marines engaged the Velis Clade in a substantial raid. Like the Velis Clade was raiding the planet of Athenon 6 with a substantial force. And then Edencom deployed like a reactionary force to the constellation in response to the raid. And this was like the next day, I believe.
So if you go to that system in Tranquility, can you find Edencom, or is it still just like Triglavians and NPCs?
So right now there is, I'm getting to it, but at the moment there is an Edencom structure that is cloaking and decloaking. And in May, the Caldari flipped the system to take space superiority control via the faction warfare mechanics. Like the players flip the system, so Caldari have the control of the system at the moment. And so there's Caldari Navy NPCs around this Edencom structure. And given the orders from that NPC you were talking about, they're engaging anybody who is not of the state navy or the state militia. So this is important. It's basically Caldari state surrounding this Edencom structure and telling everybody else to screw off.
And that's if you're in faction warfare, you're safe if you approach, or is that no cap?
It says that the Caldari state militia, in obviously I'm not in the state militia, so I haven't tested it, but according to the mail, they shouldn't be shooting the state militia.
Oh, so this is like, but they would still, because Amar is aligned with the Caldari, but they're not state militia.
So if you pull up the actual mail, it says authorized corporations are Caldari, Navy, and State Protectorate. So the Amar militia is aligned with the Caldari militia, but according to the NPC's mail, it says the Caldari Navy and the State Protectorate are the two authorized entities. So
that's interesting. I don't know if I've seen that.
There's been a number of people who scienced it, but it's quite odd behavior, because even if you're like positive to Caldari and not in the militia, that they'll like shoot you.
Yeah, I'm just calling out a lot of this because I'm so used to like normal faction warfare stuff where it's like Amar and Caldari are okay, like the state police, even like flying around and defending or attacking plexes in faction warfare space. So this is interesting to me. But yeah, so I distracted you. So it flipped. It flipped to Caldari. Edencom came in. So then what happened next with the NPCs? Or I guess maybe even the players.
Right. Well, then we got the reports of the mysterious cloaked station in Athanon. This is before the NPCs mentioned anything. And when it first came up, you saw the Caldari Navy, but they weren't like shooting everybody yet, right? There's like a big article if you want to read it about Edencom about the Edencom structure being discovered in orbit, and it's like cloaking and uncloaking. It's an old model that was like teased during the invasions, and everybody wanted to see it come to fruition as like a microstructure of some sort. But they're using it again for this. So most of this is the biggest of the news articles so far, I believe, with a whole section dedicated to the Edencom structure.
Okay.
Right now, there's a lot of push to go for the system of Athanon by the NPCs. I think a lot of since the system is at the end of a little pipe, I think a lot of the fighting is happening not in Athanon itself, but like in the systems leading up to it, because it is in a really inconvenient spot, right? For a lot of people.
So you're saying there's a bunch of gate camps for all the people trying to check it out?
There myself, I've had people in like my alliance go there, and there's like a lot of RPers showing up there, so it is a prime spot for gate camps. I would forewarn.
No, that is good to know. All right, so NPCs are pushing it, but like, are players really doing it? Or are they? Because I don't know much about.
NPCs aren't pushing it, but they're yelling at the players to push it, and I do believe a lot of the players are getting interested in it.
Okay.
The statistics.
Yeah, I'm looking at Dotland that Nick's showing us, just showing like bright red.
It seems pretty stable at the moment. Like I said, like I've definitely heard a lot of the fighting is in the systems leading up to it at the moment. It didn't seem to go higher than 3%, according to Dotland.
Okay. That's crazy. So why? Does anyone know like why this system over any? Because I know you talk a lot of we've had tons of shows of the lore
on Twitch. CCP Swift, not Twitch, on Reddit. CCP Swift said it wasn't an accident in a thread complaining about the location of the NPC objective, basically. I mean, the most obvious thing is that it is the Triglavian minor victory, and they can use that to instill conflict with like Triglavians landing on the planet and Edencom deploying to it and all that. It is the only Triglavian minor victory in Placid, I believe. And it's a weird dead end. I don't know of anything else from long ago that happened there. So beyond those facts, I'm not quite sure if there's anything big about the planet or the system.
Okay. It just seems so random, I guess. Because you also called it out because you said it was a system the Triglavians invaded, but it didn't have a blue or yellow star, which I think when Triglavians first invaded, it was based on the star of the planet or of the system, right?
So in the Triglavian Invasions Chapter 3, Triglavians invaded systems of all star types, but if it was a blue star or a specific class of yellow star and the Triglavians won, it went liminal and eventually would become Pochven if the Triglavians pushed it to final liminality.
Okay.
For the other types, whichever side won, be it Edencom or Triglavians, got a minor victory instead of in the case of Triglavians, a liminality, or in the case of the Edencom, a fortress. So,
Okay.
in addition to the 27 systems of Pochven and the 50-something fortresses that Edencom won, there's 28 minor victories for the Triglavians and like 80-something for the Edencom. So these are the systems where if you're running around, you'll see like it's not Pochven and it's not a fortress, but there might be rats, like a lot of rats on the gate because there'd be gun stars and wereposts. And you've heard of people complaining about the Triglavian gate camps.
Yes.
And getting wrecked.
They have the gate guns and they're really annoying.
Yeah, and people shoot the guns to get the NPCs to come to the gate, and they kill everything that has bad standings. Like there's the big Edencom one in Bay that is always on the way to the Jita. But yeah, this is a Triglavian minor victory, and you'll see Triglavians around the system.
Okay. And someone in chat, Lorelite, is saying now might be a good time to mention that a lot of the initial gains are made by a small group of RPers to secure Caldari interests.
That is true. When the Caldari flipped it, it was a lot of the reason they flipped it is because of a small RP group in the Caldari militia that went there because of the news articles about Triglavians landing on the planet. Their name is like the 103rd Sublimation. Let me look up the exact name of the group.
So that's interesting then, that because you talked about how like it probably wasn't that big of a system. People probably didn't.
Yeah,
pay attention.
103rd Sublimation group. It's a Caldari militia. It's a small Caldari militia group that focuses on RP. They have a relationship with Streebog Lead.
Oh, okay.
And, yeah. So like they have a really, really invested Caldari RP. Remilia Malsha in the group, as well as some other RPers too, but Remilia is like very prominent. And they really went hard on Athanon to flip it to Caldari. Because they want control to see their Trig friends, right?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah, no, that's just interesting then, because it's like this random system, and until the NPCs start asking folks for it, people just probably didn't pay attention too much. For Chapster and chat, RP is role player.
Yes.
So those who do actions based on their in-game character and the story they've created with their in-game character.
Yeah, but like I said, I think a lot of the fighting is in the pipe leading up to it, so that's like Alparena and such.
So there's this Edencom structure, Triglavians are attacking on planets or doing raids on planets. So then what happens next? I'm assuming there's going to be a fight between Edencom and Triglavians then?
Well, this is not the only place in the cluster where Edencom and like Triglavian stuff is flaring up tensions between the empires. This is the one in faction warfare space, but there's another in non-faction warfare space too, in the Amar system of Arsia. And I think these two are very connected, and what are leading us into the first storyline arc as announced in FanFest.
Okay.
So for those who don't know, Eve is moving in a direction where it's going towards running storyline arcs kind of like as a replace for quadrants, where like a lot of the developments and new stuff in the game is going to be introduced through mediums such as like storytelling, kind of like the same way we got like the Confessor and the Sweeple and the Hecate and the Jackdaw. There'll be a lot of like storyline events where like players have like an impact on like things like the order of which we get ships or when we get ships and how the story progresses and when stuff is released. And that's kind of like what they got at during FanFest.
Yeah.
But in the Amar Empire, there's a system called Arshat, and Arshat's very notable in that during the invasions, it was the only system for either side to be pushed to the second stage for one side and then back flipped to the other side. So it was pushed to first liminality, which means the Triglavians came in and they won the first stage of the fight. And the system dropped from high sec to low sec. And then Edencom came in, and I was directly a part of this. Came in, and we worked all night to flip it back to Edencom control and secure the system. So it's a fortress, and it has one of the star, like the, what is it, the Triglavian, the big beam that shot the star and
okay,
and basically corrupted the star. But so they have a captured stellar transmuter. That's the word I'm looking for so early in the morning. And the Armar Empire is basically fortifying around this transmuter that was captured with international efforts, with big military bases, and some of the other nations, especially those hostile to the Armar, are going, what the hell is this? This is won by international efforts, and we need it for research, for international purposes, to reverse the systems in Pochvan. So we can learn from the stellar transmuter we captured. It's the only one we captured. And I don't know, but I expect that this is going to be one of the primary conflict drivers on the Amar side, Amar and Minmatar, unless something else pops up in the other war zone, which doesn't have a lot of Triglavian victories. So it has some Edencom victories, like there's a minor victory in Oy. So I think maybe that's why they went with Arsia for like the Amar drama system and Athanon for the Caldari and Glente drama system.
I kind of like the Amar drama though, because that feels very, instead of it being like this outside force, it feels very like inner turmoil, which is kind of, that's kind of why we have faction warfare.
That's true, but the problem with Arsia is right now it's a high-sec system. So unless people start dropping structures and declaring war on each other, you're unlikely to see too much explode. And it's not that people haven't dropped structures and declared war on each other over news reports in high-sec before. Like the Becca was totally a thing where that happened. But I just wonder if I haven't seen anything so far that would elicit that reaction. So like I kind of really like the low sec objective. If we're going into like an arc of conflict drivers to get people into space shooting each other. But we'll see where they go. Like they could definitely do something where people are declaring war on each other in Arshad.
Yeah, that would be interesting too. Nick is making a comment. For those in chat, he cannot talk. So he says the Amar versus Minmatar drama feels more visceral and personal, whereas Galente and Caldari is more like a slap fight between siblings.
It's complicated. Like there's a lot of Caldari who really feel that the Galente are not like a sibling, but like actually an existential threat who is like a big bad imperialist who had control of the homeworld for so long. Because for those who don't know, Caldari Prime is in the same system as Galente Prime, right? And for the longest time, Caldari Prime was just like not fully controlled by the Caldari until like there was a big battle where players were in space and like a Titan got whelped because there was a Titan sitting over Caldari Prime for the longest time to protect it. There's a lot of drama on that side, and I wouldn't just discount it as it's kind of a slap fight. Both the conflicts are pretty heated.
No, that's good. That's a good I kind of like the analogy, even though it's probably inaccurate.
I
Yes.
mean, there's room for interpretation from like on like pretty much everything in the game. That's one of the beautiful parts about the lore. It's not always cut and dry.
Yeah, agreed. So we kind of talked about, oh, thank you, Nick, for the gifted subs. When we were talking about next steps, or I guess like what the future holds with this, and I think we're still kind of up in the air. There may be something for the Amar Mimitar, there may be not. But you're kind of hinting this is going for the arc that CCP is going to be leading to. I know CCP is usually quieter in the summer with their updates and whatnot, but I'm guessing we may see more of this coming in the fall, so maybe like the August, September timeframe.
Yeah, I think this is the first event in the series of events that they'll be using to start that faction warfare rework that they talked about.
Well, I think what I just linked in the podcast goes to say Gerg is pretty much right. If you look, this is the newest news article that has the communications given by the two NPCs for anybody who wants to read them both. And it talks about not just Athenon, but how diplomatic tensions at Concord are kind of going south, right? So the four empires work and legislate and communicate through the body of Concord. Concord is basically the legislative body that prevents the entire universe from being at total war. The militia wars are a limited war governed by a treaty through Concord. The Concord Emergency Militia War Powers Act, right? So a lot of these diplomatic tensions being heightened, I think, is probably just to clear the way for changes to that act, which is faction warfare updates, right? Like changes to the Concord Emergency Militia War Powers Act would lore-wise coincide with mechanical changes for faction warfare.
Ah, that makes sense. And then this is where they'd also introduce, like, what was it, the heraldry system, where you could fight for a faction and not be part of it. I'm guessing that's
so you're thinking of the allegiance faction,
yeah,
the allegiance
allegiances.
system, which was something that was announced during FanFest that'll allow people to declare allegiance for a faction. And I think part of the reason for this is to let people who maybe are in a corporate alliance that they really like still enter individually faction warfare. And it's really important how they implement this because there's a lot of janky mechanics with being in an alliance or being in a corp and who you can shoot at, when you can shoot at them, and all sorts of stuff that could be used to game the system if it's not implemented right. So this is the allegiance system is going to be monumental, and it's really imperative that it's done right.
No, yeah, that's a good call. I'm curious because it just reminds me. I'm gonna circle it back to where I know things. Like I remember the Alliance tournament, and you could hire mercenaries. This is going to be like the factions hiring mercenaries. Like instead of being like, "Oh, you have to join us and fight," it's, "Hey, we'll just hire you and pay you to fight." And I think that's good. I'm excited for it in the game.
Yeah, I think it's gonna I think if done right, and I think it will be done right. CCP Aurora is great. I've been talking to her a bit, and she's passionate, and she definitely knows her stuff. So it's something that I'm excited about. And yeah, I think it will bring a lot of life to regions of space that maybe have needed it for a while.
Yeah, that's good. So I feel like we covered this really quickly, but it's already like 30 minutes into the show. Did we miss something with this fighting and this lore, kind of this area around faction warfare? I'm not sure. I feel like we went through it quickly, so I'm trying to make sure we didn't miss anything. I'm watching her. Oh, you have to push to talk. I can't hear you.
Hello? All right.
Oh, yep.
I think we pretty much went through the main points of everything right now. I linked most of the articles that go into some depth about some of the specifics, like the Triglavians and the escalating tensions in Concord in the podcast, and you can link those to people. But I think the main points have been hit.
Okay. I did link the latest one. I'll link the others. I don't know if that was what we were doing.
I mean, the latest one is the most important. Like, a lot of the others are just like
It's
the build up where there's like a mention, then there's like another mention, and yeah.
And Lorelai in chat is saying, it's worth mentioning the Empires have been openly confirmed to be doing diplomatic stuff with the Triglavian clades.
So a lot of what if you remember last year during the various faction holidays like Federation Day and there were proving ground events where, like, for the Minmatar one, you went and you shot each other in the proving grounds with rifters, for example. Those things were not, I mean, they were a part of a game, but they were also, in character-wise, actually because there was diplomatic contact between the Triglavians and the various empires. Like Minmatar reaching out to Prune Clade or vice versa and setting up this Rifter FFA in the whatchamacallit, in the Proving Grounds. Because the Proving Grounds are run by the Prune Clade of the Triglavian Collective. And it's not a mistake that they accidentally do like an Enyo one during Galente Day, Federation Day, and a Rifter one during Liberation Day, and an Omen one during Foundation Day. That is because the Empires do talk to the Triglavians. Right now, as of right now, they're unlikely to be on friendly terms, but they are definitely talking. There's definitely diplomatic contact at this point. And it would be impossible for there not to be. The Velis Clade raid on Athanon 6 was very strange. Like, there wasn't a lot of, like, landing on planets and raiding like that, especially outside of, like, the first couple encounters with the Triglavians way back when, where, like, people were abducted and, like, bioadapted and, like, returned. And that was probably, like, to test to see if they could bioadapt them before going on and to create Pochven and making sure that the people could still live there after the stars returned to Pochven.
That's like a weird thing though, right? Because like when you raid, that usually means you want some, right? You need supplies or whatever. Or you're just there to kill people.
Well,
so why would Triglavians come to K-Space and try to get supplies?
Like I said, the minor victories, they call it the Forest of Glorification. They are specifically for resource gathering. Like, they have limited amount of resources in their home abyssal space and limited amount of resources in Pod. They have little entrenched hunting grounds in these minor victories where they can gather other resources. I personally believe, and this is just out of my butt, this is not anything other than my own speculation, but I think they need some amount of biomatter, kind of like the drifters do. But that's not anything out of my own, like, nearly baseless speculation. Well, maybe not entirely baseless, I think, but based on, like, the fact that they have captured people and they are raiding a planet, right?
Yeah, it seems rather suspicious.
But yeah, that's not something confirmed. I know that's something a lot of people disagree with, like, vehemently, but that's something I think.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see when the arc kind of fully takes shape, or we kind of get to the end to see where all the speculation ends up and whatnot.
Yeah. It's hopefully going to be a really, really interesting ride, and I honestly can't wait till the next steps and some of the first changes that were announced in FanFest going through.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm really glad you're on CSM to kind of like champion this stuff too and kind of be like the biggest voice for feedback about it.
Yeah, like if faction warfare changes weren't announced during FanFest, I wouldn't have run again. I'm honestly wouldn't have. But they were, and I did, and it worked out.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I don't know. I'm still watching chat. I don't see any more questions or thoughts. I don't know, Gerg, if you have any.
I think that's all that I can think of to cover.
Alrighty, I don't know if Arsia, you have any final thoughts, or we can shift topics. Your call.
I mean, I'm fine mostly with shifting topics. I think it's still in a stage where like a lot of it is speculation. I would encourage, if you're really interested in what's going on there, or at least you want some targets to shoot, maybe head over that way and help set fire to that pipe.
All right, I'm gonna type it in chat for folks. But yeah, I feel like when we talk about lore and faction warfare stuff, it's always like after the fact of everything happens, and it was like, oh, there was all this stuff, that's so cool, and now we're like talking about it kind of as it's happening or in the middle. So
yeah, we are kind of at like the early to middle stages. I think it's not like covering something that happened years ago and we have all the information at this point.
Do we expect the Amar and Minotaur militias to do an equivalent event, or will they have a different event that has, a similar thing or something like that?
So, like right now, like I said, right, the main point of contention right now in Amar space is over the Stellar Transmuter. As of yet, I haven't seen anything pop up in the Minmatar Amar War Zone. I would be happy if something did, because I'm not sure that we'll have to see where Arsia goes, but I'm not sure that it's going to be something that inspires in its current form. I'm not sure that it's going to inspire like high sec vortex over it. So we'll see where Arsia goes and where the Amar Minmatar conflict goes in that direction. I think maybe a point of difficulty is that there's not any like Triglavian victories in the Minmatar or Amar War Zone. I believe there's a couple. There's an Edencom victory in Oyonata, but that war zone was largely untouched. Most of the invasions timed out because, unlike the Kaldari, the Minmatar and the Amar both could fight the Triglavians.
Yeah, the Kaldari rats were weird.
By weird, you mean they were horribly underpowered. The Amar ones were overpowered. The Minmatar and the Galente fought about evenly, and the Kaldari were just a joke.
Yeah, that was partly because of missile damage mechanics. Like, I was part of a group of people who were cheesing the Kaldari sites in Confessors and Purifiers.
Yeah, because they had 0% EM resist at first. You could just kill the Dread with the Confessors.
And because of missile damage mechanics,
they don't have webs. They had one web on the Curious.
The Kirin, you mean? Or
Kirin. Kitsune. You're right. Kitsune. What?
And application of missiles on afterburner armor frigates is not that high.
Yeah. And they would all ECM the same target.
Classic. Thanks, NPCs.
NPCs behaving like players. Boom!
Gosh, that'd be the most radical change ever.
And I'm saying they already are when they all ECM the same target. Everybody point the primary, right?
Yes. Or like where you damp the Logi that are all sitting on top of the fleet, so it doesn't even frickin' matter. Are you tracking disrupt the Logi? That's my favorite, watching new players tracking disrupt my Logi ship. Like, bro, I don't got guns. What are you doing?
How can you guard them now, Guardian?
That's what rats do too. Rats cheat. I still think rats are the worst. Like, I always say rats are worse than players because they never make mistakes. They just do their programming.
I mean, in the Amar Minmatar Warzone, there was a big fight in Asset the other day. Shameless plug.
Is that where you were at?
Yeah, that was the one I linked in the show notes.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Where Phoenix Naval Systems and us, Alexis Matari, and Lumen attacked a localist primary structure. And there was a pretty big fight. Localist primary came out ahead. Like 120 billion lost, like 70 to 50 with a couple ships not showing up on either side. Really, really fun fight. Came out of LIP hitting a PNS structure. Came out at a bad time for them. And then we went back and hit them. And there's some drama over that because Lumen was involved. They're blue with PNS. And there's been hostilities between them and Localist Primary. And Lumen is a Amar roleplay group. Localist Primary is the majority of the Amar militia. So there's some dramas there. The FC of Localist Primary and leader Mikhail Victor wrote a Reddit AAR that's fairly factual and accurate. So that's something to look up.
All right, yeah. No, that's good. We have had him on the show, too, to talk about faction warfare, so. Lots of. I feel like the faction warfare world is large yet small.
It was it was a nice little 120 billion-esque fight. My dread warped out, so I'm happy.
That's funny. Yeah, so there's stuff going on in Minmatar Amar, but just not like the current Treglavian lore stuff. At least not yet. Dun dun dun.
Yeah.
And Gerg, would you like a chance? So if we're gonna shift gears, unless anyone else has any other thoughts, we can talk about Black Frog.
Yeah, a few days ago, Black Frog lost to a Nomad jump freighter, which is very rare. So most of the time when people get hired for Black Frog, it's people who've already have a proven track record of knowing how to use a jump freighter so that they can make sure that they almost always get things to where they need to go. So I decided to look through the 62 jump freighters that they've lost over the years. That's 62 starting in 2011, which is pretty low considering what they do. And I found that more than half of those losses were from just 3 different groups.
All right, so when looking at, so I know you're talking about the history, but with this specific jump freighter that Nick's showing on screen with Sonya, so is this just like because you said they're supposed to have experience, so is this a rookie mistake, or is this maybe they just got super unfortunate?
I don't know what happened. From what I heard, this guy might have just had some disconnection issue where he got caught before the game warped him off or something. Or some small issue like that. That's it. I wasn't there, so I can't tell you exactly what happened, but that's the kind of thing that it sounded like to me.
Okay, no, that's fine. And yeah, I mean, I guess literally nothing in the game can protect you when you disconnect. So that's super unfortunate. But yeah, I don't know if you want to go through Black Frog's history. I feel like I always knew who Black Frog was. Like whenever I wanted to move stuff, people were like, "Oh, just use Black Frog, Red Frog," and I'm like, "Okay, like that was just the name people used."
Yeah, Red Frog. I've known about them. I heard about them even before I started playing Eve, and then sometime after I started playing Eve, I found out that they had a jump freighter service, Black Frog, which made sense to me that they would have something like that.
Yeah.
For those who aren't aware, Red Frog Freight and Push Industries are the two largest groups that specialize in handling freighter contracts through HiSec, and they both do some other stuff in low-sec and null-sec with smaller ships and jump freighters. So Red Frog has their jump freighter stuff in a completely separate corporation, and that is what Black Frog is.
Was Black Frog low sec then? Low sec, high sec?
Black Frog is jump freighters to NPC stations and player structures that have a specific agreement with Red Frog that they know that they'll be able to dock in those and tether in those structures.
So does that include nullsec then?
Yeah. A couple of
Oh.
years ago, when some of my corp mates were renting moons in Geminate a couple of years ago, we saw that other people who had moons in the same system got Black Frog to handle their logistics.
Okay. But they've only lost for what, like over 10 years? Only 62 jump freighters have been lost.
Yeah, that's pretty
solid.
low considering what they do.
Yeah, like that's like nothing. And so I'm reading through the notes, and you're talking about like some of them are suicide ganking multi-boxers.
Yeah, 16 are two groups of suicide ganking multi-boxers. Jason Cusion, who has been with, he's affiliated with Goonswarm, but he's mostly known for doing stuff separately. He's had characters in Code for a while, at times. And there was another Code affiliated multi-boxer as well.
Yeah, because I recognize that name because I think he streams too. Like he shows like how you can multi-box without like doing anything. I think
he once showed off how he cycles through his clients as fast as he does in response to allegations that he was input broadcasting. He showed people what he does that it was not input broadcasting.
Yeah, all right. So suicide gankers, then the next one's snuff.
Yeah, snuffed out. A lot of them were either snuffed out, the Alliance specifically, or well, this new one was a snuffed out members Alt Alliance, and or various groups that have connections to snuffed out. Like, for example, Penn is out. They disbanded, but before they disbanded, they were friendly. Well, as they weren't, I don't think they were officially blue, but they often worked together, and a lot of their members joined Snuffed Out when they disbanded. And Your Dunked they've killed a couple, and they are the usual Lone Trek hot droppers, and a few of them also have characters in Snuffed Out. And then Bastage Network, that corporation has appeared, having killed a few of these jump freighters in various alliances. Although they are currently in Snuffed Out, but they were not in Snuffed Out whenever they killed jump freighters that I saw.
Okay.
On this. Killed Black Frog jump freighters that I saw looking through this, but I counted them as connected to Snuffed Out because they are currently in Snuffed Out.
Yeah, that would make sense. Like either really odd coincidence or has always been there.
Yeah, they're long-time low-sec hot droppers who, in the past, year or so joined Snuffed Out, moved from Ivana to Snuffed Out.
I don't know if this is related, but I feel like since Into the Portal, there's been more attempts at ganking jump raiders because the Black Ops ships got that increased to cloaked velocity bonus, and I see like Panthers cloaked on gates, and when the jump raider warps to the gate after jumping in, the Panther tries to like MWD and cloak and then bump it off as it's moving really, really fast.
Yeah, you do see that a lot more of Black Frog's jump freighters died in just the past couple of years than ever before.
But yeah, I've definitely seen a lot more attempts at jump freighters since the Enter the Portal update.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I've heard of a lot more people trying to try hot dropping since the Black Ops changes.
You don't even hot drop with it. You cloak off a gate, and when a jump freighter, and a system where jump freighters jump in and warp to high sec.
Yeah, and I've also definitely seen a lot of people using, in War Deck alliances, using Panthers to gate camp high sec entrances.
Oh, to like bump and yeet them into Narnia? Or
I've just seen Panthers on kill mills. I haven't really. Yeah. I don't really go into high sec very often myself, but I see on a lot of high sec jump freighter kill mills that are war decks. I see Panthers in entrance systems. So something bumped the JF off the gate, and there was a Panther on the kill mill.
Yeah,
so that makes sense.
Yeah, Panthers are like ideal because they're the fastest blops. You hit the cloak and your MWD, while it's still cycling, it's like 650% speed. So you just like ram it like super hard.
That's crazy. I didn't even think of that when looking at some of this stuff. Then the last one, what about the last group, Gerg?
The third group that it was Wrecking Crew. I saw 2 purple helmeted warriors jump freighter kills that were in systems that in Derelict that people frequently use for mids. I think one was Hothomo and I forget what the other was, but there are a few systems that are frequently used for mids in Derelict, and traditionally hot dropping people passing through those systems has been a specialty of purple helmeted warriors. And then there were 4 that were domain research and mining, which is also known as Arton, their alliance ticker, doing the same thing in domain, which that's traditionally what they've done. And then if you go back a few years, you also see a few of the core members of Arton doing the same thing under a different alliance name in those same systems, which social club, I believe.
Yep.
So even though that is not one of the current Wrecking Crew alliances, since it's the same people as one of the core ones, I counted that as RC.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if you're wrong, somebody will always tell us, right?
Yeah, that's the best way to find out what the actual truth is. Just say something incorrect on the internet.
Exactly. And then you're also talking about Vendetta Mercenaries.
Yeah, Vendetta Mercenaries is the largest group other than these big 3. Vendetta Mercenaries and a few other high-sec war deck groups, but more of them than any others. And they killed 3 Black Frog jump freighters, but because of the war deck changes of 3 years ago, that's not possible anymore because Red Frog keeps their alliance war deck immune by not holding structures. It used to be that a common way for jump freighters to die was to be caught by war deckers and any player, corporation, or alliance could be targeted by a war deck, but in 2019 they changed that to only include alliances that own structures.
Yeah, and I'm looking because I think you linked one of the kill, or not the kill mails, the corpse and Z kill, and like it is insane. I did not realize they've like Red Frog has lost 50,000 ships. Well, that was wild to me. Like, how do you even do that?
Well, if you look at Black Frog in particular, most of their losses are Sino ships.
Yeah, I did notice that.
Indie Sinos.
But yeah, it's like, oh, I guess it includes the pod too. But that's just wild. I guess that makes sense though when you have a massive group for so long doing what they do.
I mean, even if you have a small group for a long time, like Electus Matari's lost 21,000 ships. It's just old. It's
That's
tiny,
so
but it's
many.
old. Right. And
I'm
that's
like,
just on Z-Kill.
Yeah, that doesn't include everything off
Yeah.
Z-Kill.
Yeah. But yeah, like being old has numbers inflation, right? Like numbers get big.
Over time, yeah.
Yeah.
But no, that was just interesting because I remember when you guys brought up Black Frog losing something and only 62 jump fairs. Like, that's like a really good record. Like, if that's solely what you do and you've only lost 62 over the span of a decade, that's pretty good. Like, I've lost like 1,000 times that because I fly solo PvP ships and I feed, so.
Yeah, like with the age of a group, like if you have a few people in a corp and each of them loses, I get maybe 30 ships a year, which is probably pretty low for an active PvP group. That'll add up over the years.
I think my favorite part is if you look at Red Frog's kills, the second one is a freighter that they were webbing that got catalysted.
Yeah, Red Frog does not allow people to PvP with any
Right,
any character in Red Frog, so
they have 141 kills, all right?
And most of those are by
Our freighters they were webbing that got ganked.
That's funny. I never thought about that. It's even better because some of them are solo kills.
I think solo kill, there's, what is it? It's a Kestrel in the Abyss. All right.
They killed an Atron and Derelict, apparently. Oh, I think it took station guns and they shot back.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Red Frog, new up and coming PvP alliance.
Yeah. All right. No, I just thought it was
one of the best freighter killers I've ever seen.
Nick in chat is standing for them, like supporting them. They said they have a good record getting his stuff where it needs to be, and that's what I know.
Please don't ban me from doing contracts, Red Frog. I need you.
Yeah, Red Frog. Every time I've used them, they've gotten the stuff where it needed to go. Well, I've mostly used them for consolidating my high sec assets in Cheetah.
I use Red Frog and push all the time.
Yeah, I should use them, but my asset list makes people angry, so I keep it as it is.
My asset list freezes the game when I open it. Like,
yeah, I have random stuff all over the place too, in various low sec NPC stations.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Just open my asset list, search Harbinger, Tranquility crashes.
Oh no.
Yeah, right. So I mostly, when I'm moving stuff that it's small in low sec, I use Push X since they have more of a thing for blockade runners, but Red Frog
Yes,
is what I
yeah.
use when I want stuff moved through high sec.
Heck yeah.
I'm usually the same. There's been a couple times when PushX had like a deal that made me use them in high sec, right? Like, but generally the same, yeah.
Yeah. Someone in chat with the dad jokes in their ganking group would be Blinky Red Frog. Because you get the criminal timer.
Flashy Frog.
I
Yeah.
would be very concerned if any Red Frog character had a criminal timer, especially one of the freighter pilots.
So somebody has to make a gang group called Flashy Frog now. It's too good.
Just do all like Revenge of the Freighters, or all of them making their alts into this corp where all they do is gank
No,
other people.
gank with like haulers, like a bunch of like sigils. Right?
You wait till Catalyst lock you up, and then you just like scram them and watch them die.
Oh, I've tried to fly around with like a sigil that was just like PvP fit. Nobody ever shot me.
The worst.
Yeah, a lot of these gankers, they will scan your
Yeah.
fit to see how many ships they need to kill you.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you're flying a brick tank sigil, they'll just not bother.
That's cowards, dude. That's all I'm hearing. So if we want to transition from the jump freighter discussion, I figured we'd have a little bit of talk there, because I feel like, like I was saying when we started, everyone knows them, but they don't get talked about a lot, really. Probably a good thing for them.
Yeah, they're definitely pretty secretive. Like, I don't blame them, especially if you want to convince people that you might be worth having on nullsec alliances docking ACLs.
Yeah, well, that, and if you're doing, because EVE is all about trust, so when you're handing something over to a jump freighter service, like, unless you're expecting collateral, like, you kind of have to have some element of trust there. So I get it. I get why they don't want to talk.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I would use the example of Eden Trade. He runs a few market citadels around the various places. He has openly acknowledged being a member of Snuffed Out, and that's not the most popular alliance in the game, so I have a feeling that if he ran a freight service instead of his market stuff, openly acknowledging that would be bad for business. Some people wouldn't trust him to handle his whole freight, and others might.
Who would you say
him.
is the most popular alliance in the game?
Signal Cartel.
That is probably a pretty solid answer.
Yeah.
Red Frog, right? Or
Yeah.
Red Frog, Black Frog, Signal Cartel. The people who
Push,
have a history of just helping each other.
Yeah, that's. Everyone else has built up enemies over the years.
Very true. Speaking of enemies, you guys want to talk about the war? Supposed war? There's a war going on.
Which one?
There's a big nullsec fight again.
Oh, no war. Oh, you mean the one that the Imperium announced?
Yeah. Imperium announced they're going to war. They moved. They're fighting a bunch of people who are deployed to defend Fire. So Fire's in like the southeast-ish. They've lived there for I don't know how long, because I feel like it was going on since before the last war.
Yeah, they've been there for a while. As long as I can remember.
Yeah, and so I feel like the southeast has always been like Russian space, and Fire's Russians. And so then Imperium declared war. They moved a bunch of stuff. I think it was to Ketch. I want to say it was Ketch, but I could be wrong. I haven't really been following this because people announced there was a war, and then like there's been like one battle report. And this was over UALX, which has obviously its history. It was over
the
IHUB.
Imperium deployed to the GE Attack Keepstar that used to be Brave's staging Keepstar. Brave sold it to, I think, Army of Mango when they moved up north, and then Army of Mango inexplicably transferred it to the Imperium for some stuff that resulted in that was a weird turn of events. Like AOM, they said that they had made an agreement to join the Imperium, and the Imperium immediately, after accepting a couple of structure transfers, said that they were being kicked, and then Ranger Regiment was also being kicked for working with them. That was weird. I don't understand what happened.
Sounds super weird. But the long story short is Imperium moved to Catch. G and Catch. I think there's 2 G's in Catch, but
GE Tech 8JV.
The old Brave staging.
Yeah, Brave staging. In most recent time, they lived in Catch, and many years ago, which is why if you look at a lot of the people who are old PL guys, they have a large number of kills in that system because it was Brave's staging back then too.
Because PL likes to pick on the little guy, picking on some newbies. Alright, so there's the battle report from, when was this? It says 3 days ago. Is there a date? Oh, there it is. The 24th. So yeah, was that Thursday night? Yeah. So it would have been US time zone Thursday night. Everyone else, Friday morning. Big fight over an iHub.
Yeah, the Imperium attempted to get the initial reinforce on the UALX iHub.
A lot of people remember UALX because that was, 2018? That was that big fight. Thankfully, it sounded like this fight went a lot better with whatchamacallit, with tie-dye and just fleet enforcements and stuff. I don't think it was a big super cat fight though, based on this BR. But there were.
The Imperium was trying to bring in a lot of Sino ships at the beginning, and then I, as a Guardian, was repairing a few Sino inhibitors, so it definitely looked like the Imperium was trying to drop supers, but at the beginning, but they were not able to do that. And after a while, I stopped seeing Imperium Sino ships coming through the gate.
Okay, and then someone in chat, Alien, says, Catch was to stop the anchored fraternity structures on their way to the current conflict with Pappy. Conveniently on the route.
Yeah, that is the Imperium. What their officially stated what's going on.
Why would fraternity go through Pravi space and not PanFam space?
Well, the Chinese portion of Winter Coalition has been deployed against Dracarys, which is a Chinese Imperium alliance. Former GOTG alliance, which after that coalition collapsed, most of them either, Darkness merged into the Initiative, and the rest mostly joined the Imperium separately.
Yeah. I mean, makes sense that Chinese one side would fight Chinese other side, because otherwise you're fighting outside your time zone. But yeah.
When are they going to nerf time zones?
I mean, people want time zones to be nerfed, but it's like, I'm not getting up at 5 a.m. when I have to work in the morning to fight it.
No, we just have to make the Earth flat.
Just make it all one time zone.
You just got to make the Earth flat, yeah. Or just have people make it all one time zone, and if it's night, it's night.
Exactly.
Well, that's kind of one of the things that gave Serenity a different character from Tranquility, that people were all on the same time zone.
Yeah, that must be weird.
I wonder if there's like a different faction of people who are like, yeah, I'm in school, so therefore summers I'm every time zone, or like, hey, I'm retired, so therefore I don't have to go to work, so I can play whenever I want.
There's always like the big like NA versus EU group fight energy, where like you just keep reinforcing each other's structures, not showing for like 7 months, and then
Exactly.
somebody gets killed by somebody else.
Yeah, that's how it goes. It's also really fun, though. I will say, having multiple time zones is great when you have these big fights that kick off like early EU, and then you just watch the world as people have to go to work and then come home, and then they draw in reinforcements. When you have these massive fights, stuff like that is actually really fun.
Or like things like faction warfare sieges where you need 24-hour coverage, or like background invasions where you need a 24-hour coverage and you worked in shifts.
Yeah, it's kind of wholesome watching the world work together for really
I
weird
think
games.
the time zone thing is one of the coolest parts of how EVE works.
Yeah. But yeah, so there's a comment in chat by Nick. He says it's a boredom war or manufactured content war, nothing serious at stake. As far as I'm aware, unless you're living in the war zone, so I know we have LB in chat. I think his group used to live in the war zone. If not, they probably still do. And then also like Fire. I think Fire is the only place who has like their homeland under attack. And yeah, I agree. My alliance is down there. It's just content for us.
Yeah, PanFam deployed to protect Fire, which was being invaded by the Imperium. So you see the deployed PanFam groups, which are like NC, PL, and Horde, SIG, Bean, Foreign Legion formed an EOS fleet for this fight. And then you also see another Horde fleet came up from home space in Munins.
Yeah.
And then Fire formed a Cerberus fleet. And then Imperium, they formed mainly an Eagle fleet and a Cerberus fleet and a Dracarys Munin fleet, which was, I guess because of the language issue, since they're mainly Chinese, they formed a separate fleet from the rest of the Imperium.
Yeah, that would make sense. Sometimes it's also nice to have multiple fleets if you need to reposition rather than one giant blob. Kind of makes me sad though. There's a lot of hacks on here when it's like we're trying to get rid of the hack meta or stop doing the hack meta.
Yeah, so we've been hearing a few places that the reason why the Imperium stopped attempting to reinforce the iHub after 4 hours was because they actually ran out of eagles in their staging Keep Starting Catch.
Well, that's not good.
I mean, it is the beginning of a deployment. I remember at the beginning of the big war of back in July of 2020, I was in Horde and there were a few supply issues just in the first few days before the stagings were fully stocked, and when we were mostly just relying on the ships that we brought.
Yeah, logistics is a huge thing with like logistics as in like the
moving crap.
Yeah, moving stuff and building stuff, not the healer ships. But that's huge with a lot of these wars and whatnot. Not even just wars though, like even during peacetime, like not being able to move stuff around or get supplies where you need is a huge detriment.
Yeah, so the first few days of a big deployment like this are a bit awkward for getting reshipped before everyone's ships. The people who are seeding the reships get everything there. That can take a few more days.
Yeah, LB in chat saying they should have hired Black Frog to stock the staging. I mean, hey, dude, it's a strategy. If it works, it works. No shame. Oh, also call out to you, Gerg. Fire was pushing across the south towards Imperium space. So yeah, I remember that was LB's group because they were trying to take up so many regions. Because they live in, I want to say Impasse or Innsmother, but I don't actually know if that's accurate. But they were moving westish.
Yeah, LB's group is Red Menace Coalition. They live in, I forget what region, but somewhere down south.
Yeah.
After the war, the southern regions were occupied mainly by Imperium, Wrecking Crew, and Red Menace Coalition. RMC is, I think, well, LB's alliance. What could go wrong? It's Red Alliance and a couple of others. I think Evictus and Army of Mango were in there, and if I recall correctly, sorry in advance, which was one of the alliances in the final year of Pravi Block, is in there too. That was... They have a lot of Canadians, and their leader was one of the CSM candidates.
Okay. No. So war kicking off. We at least have had one good fight. I'm assuming it's a good fight. I haven't heard people say it was a terrible fight.
Yeah, I was flying a Guardian. I enjoyed it.
Nice, that's good. So we may see more, maybe not. I don't know, maybe we'll see like the return of UALX as like the big bloody battleground for a big Titan fight. I feel like if we want to talk about this more, we should probably get some like, I want to say leadership. Leadership's probably the wrong word, but some people who have come to or made some of the decisions, which we definitely don't have unless Gerg or Arsia, you somehow made decisions in this war. Because I know I definitely didn't.
I'm not involved in mill wars, except for when they happen, I go down there and shoot both sides.
If I was making decisions, I probably wouldn't be talking about them on talk shows. I prefer to be, in terms of alliance leadership, just some nobody who doesn't have to make these decisions.
Yeah, it makes it easy. Because then you're just like, I don't know, man, I'm just here for the ride. That's always the best. And then you can also say you're unbiased, because your bias is just, I like my alliance more than your alliance.
Yeah, I'm definitely biased, but I don't have to be one of the people doing anything important.
The best part about when there's like a war in Null is when you eat down there and you shoot somebody from one side and they accuse you of being from the other side. Then you jump to the next system, shoot somebody from the other side, and get accused of being from the other side. Like,
the best, right?
It's like, I am a triple agent, apparently.
They're like, oh, you're just an alt of so-and-so. And you're like, nope, I'm just here to shoot everyone.
Like, how does it feel bending the knee to so-and-so? It's like, what? I shot your, like, Entosis Drake or something. Whoa.
So much fun. I don't know anything. I just work here. Exactly, Draken. All right. I don't know if you guys have any other thoughts. We'll keep an eye on. So we have two things: the faction warfare stuff going on. Keep an eye on that, and then this war in the South, which Nick has called the Boredom War. So if anyone takes that name, Nick gets credit. But I don't know. But two things to watch. I don't know if anyone else has any other thoughts. I'm taking silence as a no, unless Nick is furiously typing to us, but I doubt it. But with that, we can do like final thoughts, and then we can head out for the day. I'll start with you, Gerg. What are your final thoughts?
I guess that's all. One of the interesting things about the UALX fight was because that it mostly occurred on a gate grid. Like, most of the big fights I've been on have occurred on structure grids, but this one was on a gate grid, which is somewhat unusual these days. It still happens from time to time, but they're less common than structure grids now.
Yeah, for sure. And there were a few structures on that, but I'm assuming that's from people accidentally warping their stuff.
Yeah, but yeah, the biggest portion of the fight was on a gate grid. The battle report that was linked covered a few systems where bits of fighting occurred, but the big part in UALX was gate grid stuff.
Yeah. And then, Arsia, any thoughts from you? Any shout-outs?
I would urge people to, if you're not, pay attention to the in-world news as the articles come out. For a long time, there's been hints of things you could figure out or find, or all sorts of like interesting tidbits and information as to what will come in the news. And I think at no time has that been more true than right now. So yeah, I just urge people to read the news, stay up to date.
Very true. So, thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Arsia, and thank you, Gerg, for joining us and opining. And thank you, Nick, our invisible man in the background, pushing all the buttons and making sure people can hear us. And then thank you, chat. Thank you for your questions and participation, especially during the lore bit. I saw you guys were super chatty then. We should be around next weekend. I would think I'm free, so I should be here. It will be a holiday weekend, so if you miss it, no worries. And then we may either push it forward or postpone it depending on people's availability, because real life obviously always comes first. I should say holiday weekend for those in the United States. Sorry to the rest of y'all for potentially not having a holiday, except those in Canada who get it a few days before. So thank you all. If Nick wants to run the outro, we can do the